And Justin, to Fongwei's point, Matt Rule said after the game during his post-game comments, Thomas Fedone, in regards to, okay, here's a guy that has all the talent in the world, and here's a guy who it's just good to see him on the field, and
Yeah.
now being able to cover a full year in which he can go through a season, go through the winter workouts, spring, and see where he can finally get into a rhythm because he's able to, get uh, just his body at the right place where it needs to be, but also his mind in the right place with the offense and being comfortable with everything because he's actually out there for an extended period of time now. And he looks primed to have a big season.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas Fedone is going to be a stud this season. Like he was one of the biggest parts of our pass game last season, as we went over in the wide receiver. When we were talking about the wide receiver course from last year, but this year, I just think with the way that they're going to use the tight ends, especially since they're going to be moving them all over the place, I think that's also going to be something this year that we're going to see that we didn't see last year. And I think he's going to have the ability to play at a lot of different places. They may shift him out wide sometimes. They may put him in the backfield sometimes. So I think what we're going to see from the tight ends, I think they want to put a real big emphasis on them. And Fedone is of course going to lead that charge. And he looks fantastic. He really has worked on, because his offensive game, has always been, his strength. He's always been a super athletic guy, great hands. He struggled a little bit with his hands last year. But typically sure-handed and, a guy that can go up and get contested catches. And that's why he was such a big part of the offense last year. And he's another guy that's another year seasoned in this, and he's one of our bigger targets. So he's definitely going to be a guy that we go to in the red zone a lot, and just in general, third down, kind of one of those type of guys. But Fedone is a do-it-all tight end that is going to really shine this year, even more so than last year, because he was handicapped in that offense. Of course, you can only put up so many numbers when your offense is like that. So yeah, a lot of good coming from that tight end room in general. Borkature, went out there, had a couple catches. Like these guys, the tight end room as a whole looks good. And I think a part of it has to do with the fact that they have a specific coach. Marcus Satterfield is able to go in there and actually work with the tight ends now, as opposed to having to juggle quarterbacks, tight ends, and offensive coordinator. Now he's Glenn Thomas as a co-OC. And so that really does help these guys be able to develop, the tight end room, the quarterback room a lot more.
About half of you are watching us on Twitter, X, right now. So just keep in mind, that's great. We appreciate you being here. That's one of the reasons why we do that on a fairly regular basis. But I got to say, it's not necessarily in the forefront of my brain every time I set up the show every week to throw it on X or throw it on Twitter. But you can count on us being on YouTube live every Tuesday at 7 Eastern and 6 Central. And then you get the added bonus of jumping into the chat. You form relationships. You're able to go back and forth with everyone in the chat. So that's the big advantage there. So if you're listening on Twitter, of course, join us here on YouTube, where it's just that much more fun.
Yep. And Fongwei's and Dion, their conversation. So Vegas had at 7.5 as the win total. 7.5, but I think that's more than doable with that early slate of games. And then they talk about realistically, great QB, blah, blah, blah. 7.5 was I think I have Nebraska pegged at 8 wins next year. And some of the bad, we did see some of the bad in the spring game, of course. Alvano, somebody I really wanted to see get out there and do well, because he is, one of the best talented kickers we've had in a long time. And this is coming from a university that has produced a lot of good kickers in the NFL, especially. And so last year just was very hit or miss, struggled a lot. So I was hoping this year maybe he would come out and just kind of, have that extra year of experience. But he comes out, he misses a 32-yarder, misses a 43-yarder, but then comes back and makes a 40-yarder. So with him, it's going to be about consistency. And it'll be interesting to see that if it'll be interesting to see if they bring in anybody or if they, but I think hopefully that they'll stick with Alvano, get it right, because he has his leg is there. It's just I feel like it's mental right now. I feel like he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to go out there and perform. And we've talked about before the yips. They could talk about it in baseball a lot. The yips, when you get out there and you're overthinking things, and it just causes you. You're thinking about the mistakes that you've made, and so it causes you to make those same mistakes. That's how it's going to work. If you're visualizing mistakes, you're going to make mistakes. So, yeah, hopefully Alvano can get it, going. The special teams just left a lot to be desired. The defense, people are going to talk about the defense, but the spring game is no indication of what our defense is going to look like. Let's be honest. There is they can't really, you don't really want to tackle low, especially because you don't want to go for players' knees. You don't want to tackle them too hard. You can't sack the quarterback. And then also just a lot of our guys weren't out there. And so, the play column was vanilla. It's one of those things where it's like the spring game typically showcases an offense and typically can, it's your defense is typically going to come out on the losing end of a spring game unless you're Iowa. So, they're the ones that have the defense winning the day there. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. It's like they struggled in areas that we expected them to struggle, but having Alvano out there and just not being able to, because you're going to need those points. You can't be chasing points the whole time. So we're going to need to be able to get threes here and there, because with how many one-score losses we have, we can expect the next step to be some one-score wins. And so with one-score wins, you need to make field goals. You need to get the points when you get the ball down the field and drive down the field, because one of the things Raiola was really good at, and if, people look at the drives and stuff, Raiola is really good at finishing drives. He not only led, the offense down the field, he was able to finish a lot of those drives. And some of the ones he didn't, at least got into field goal range, right? And those are the things that we're going to need, is to take some of the pressure off of his back and be able to get, when he gets down the field, get those points. And so hopefully Alvano can get that figured out and really try to, clear his mind and figure out what's going on, maybe with his mechanics or just, in general, because like I said, he's 5 for 5. He went 5 for 5 in the state championship game in Nebraska and kicked a 50-something yarder to win the state championship at the buzzer. So
I'm going to hit you with the tough one just because it is difficult to get intel about anything out of spring, but especially injuries. But just in case, with all of your fact finding and digging, so you mentioned Bell and Hill, obviously, unfortunately, they get hurt during the spring game. And then you mentioned a lot of players, especially in defense, that didn't show up, didn't play for precautionary reasons. But is there any reason that you've picked up to be concerned about any of those injuries lasting into August?
No, a lot of the defensive holdouts were just, we had like Ty Robinson, some of our guys, Nash Hutmacher, some of those guys that are Ramir Johnson, right? Ramir Johnson's healed. Ramir Johnson's ready to go, but they held him out because, they didn't want to rush him back. But some of these other guys, they just kind of have, because they know what Nash Hutmacher is. We know what Ty Robinson is. They are bought into this program. They don't need the experience. They wanted to get some of these other guys experience. So there was a little bit of that as well, also intertwined with, you have your Malachi Colemans and stuff like that who were a little bit banged up, but are nearing or even after their recovery, and they just are just being cautious and getting these younger guys rotated through an experience, because we were able to get, we even had, because the previous live when I was going over what our running back coach had to say about the running back room, and he had mentioned Maurice Mzuka, brother of Micah Mzuka, the lineman we got from Florida. And, he had talked about him being a guy that, like, hey, he's maybe not a scholarship guy, but if you need him to finish a game, he's the type that can do it. He plays the right way. He plays hard. He does everything the right way. Even he got to come out there and show. And he had a few good runs. Maurice Mzuka had a few good runs out there. So it's one of those guys, they were trying to get these rotations through, and I think they've learned from last year that really it's pertinent that they try to get these guys as much experience as they can, the young guys especially, because you never know when your name's going to be called.
This is the spot to be, folks. Every Tuesday to talk Huskers with Justin and myself, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Get on over to the Big Ten Show. It's right here on YouTube. You got Justin, you got Sonny, and what's going on over there this week?
So this week we are trying to iron out the Nebraska program overview. So we're working on getting a date to record that, and we'll be flipping it out sometime this coming. Well, hopefully this week. We want to try to get it out this week. So yeah, slide on over there. We'll get that up for you ASAP, and get you a little bit more knowledge even into the Nebraska. We're going to have another Nebraska reporter on too, so it's not me just giving my take, because you already hear that enough here. So yeah, if y'all want to check that out over there.
Now, if I was selfish, I would say I wouldn't want anyone to break our record that we set in terms of your 13,000 video or whatever it is.
15K now. It's at
Okay.
15,000 views.
But I want the channel just to blow up and keep going. So go ahead and break the record. Any of the greats out there say, go ahead and break my record. Want to see it get broken. So we'll keep it going from there.
If y'all don't know what he's talking about, he came onto our channel and now set the view record at 15K. So he set the bar pretty high.
That was the thumbnail. I'm convinced.
Yeah. Nah, it's Mark's expert knowledge. Come on.
No, it was a great discussion. Enjoyed it. Sonny and Justin doing a bang up job there on the Big Ten Show.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And just one thing too, about the spring game, I just thought of this because you were asking about the ratio. It was, the game was actually 60 passing attempts to 37 rushing attempts. So right on that kind of 60-40 line. But like I said, they might have showcased the pass a little bit more, but we'll see. We'll see how that works. But I think that's ultimately kind of what it's going to work out to.
So folks, also keep in mind as you come on in through the hour that if you miss something, you don't have to miss it. That just rewind the show, watch what you missed. And I'm not going to scold you for not being here on time, but next week, try to make it on time. 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And if you belong to, whether it's your Twitter account, Facebook groups, anything out there that could help us, you are our grassroots support for this channel. So there are people that have no idea, can you believe it, have no idea who Justin is, have no idea that the voice of college football exists. So get on out there and let people know that we talk Nebraska football. And of course, it's only going to get more and more important as we steamroll through the rest of the summer. We'll have some great topics. What we'll look at, among a ton of other things throughout the summer, is we will take at least the best opponents, maybe all the Big Ten opponents, and then somebody from Colorado as well, bring on some media guests during the summer to do an early summer preview of the matchup. And then, of course, game week, we'll do the same thing throughout the Big Ten season. Yep.
And Jose here, there's been some questions too about some of these transfers potentially coming in. I don't know if Cormani McLean is a target. Rule does like to build, go after guys that he's kind of already built a connection with, and or somebody in the staff has a connection with that leaves them more likely to kind of be able to land somebody like that. But I don't, a Wake Forest cornerback went in the portal today. So we might need to potentially go after a corner, a different corner to kind of, be a little bit more likely to maybe join in, with Jamal Banks being on the team. But, really just need to get some depth in that cornerback room just in case there's any issues with potentially Bly Hill. But I don't think it's necessary that they have to get one, but I think it's something they might take a look at for sure. And one more thing too that I wanted to mention. By the way, that 37 rush attempts, lowest rushing attempts ever in a spring game. Closest was 2017 with 40 attempts. So the third down percentage, again, they want to work on that in terms of getting the defense off the field on third down. That was last year. That was about 37%, which puts them about 49th. And the top teams, are in the 25 to 28%, and they're in the top 25. You know, the top 25 rounds out probably about 31% eventually. Nebraska was 42% converted third downs defensively the year prior. And they actually last year completed on third and long or third and beyond 10. They actually converted at a 31% rate, which is extremely high for third and long and not being able to get your defense off the field. So that's something they wanted to work on. But you know, overall 6 for 17 in the game. Again, not a ton to take away from that, but 35% for what it's worth. And so that's going to be a focus this year. So that's something to pay attention to. And just, you know, just so people understand that year over year has gotten better. 42% in the last 3 games could have something, you know, all to do with the injuries and stuff like that, or just the fact that in those games there wasn't a lot of offense and there wasn't a lot of possessions. So they were more heavily weighted at the fact that, you know, if you're 1 for, you know, 4, or if they're 2 for 4, you know, let's say that's already 50% right there, but you're playing a team like Iowa where you only have 4 possessions each, you know, so that little stuff like that factor into it, but that is a focus, and they did have it about 35%. I just wanted to figure that up just to see where they were at, because that's something they talked about last week.
So the rough math there, because that may not sound like a huge deal, being in the, what did you say, 37% on third down defense?
Yeah, that's
37%, and the best teams in the country are 25 to 28%, something like that. And they had a great defensive showing for the most part last year. If you look at box scores, if you're into numbers, there are usually 12 to 15 third down conversion situations. That might be a little heavy, but somewhere in the 12 range is pretty average if you look at a box score. So over the course of a season of 12, hopefully 13 games, you're looking at 160, 170 third down conversion situations. And if you can improve by close to 10%,
yeah,
then you're getting off the field 16, 18 more times during the course of the season. And then when you bring up that 31% on third and long, I got to think that those best teams that are at 25, 28% on third and long, they're probably 10%.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah. I should probably check that one too, just to see where that's at. But yeah, that's a crazy number. And you know, a lot of, you know, let's look at the Colorado game last year, because a lot of Colorado fans want to bring that up. But let's look at that game last year. That is a prime example of why your defense needs to get off of the field on third down. But that's also a prime example of why your offense needs to sustain drives. But last year, you know, the defense not being able to get off the field, and they were actually able to get off the field a lot in that first half. But then the second half comes around and they wear down, you know, because now the other team's sustaining drives because you can't get the defense off the field, and then your offense isn't sustaining drives as well. And then that makes matters worse too. So there's the potential there that the offense did play a factor in that by putting the defense back up against the wall a lot. But Matt Rule has also said that this was something that he saw as an issue. So while that may be a little bit of the case, maybe not fully, in the defense as good as it is and as good as it was, it still needs to get better at forcing turnovers and getting off the field on third down. So, you know, those are the two things that, you know, even though it's a really good defense, it's not a perfect defense. So